Okay, so this video is going to be on multiplying and dividing rational expressions, and we're going to make sure that we get to the excluded values. Now, the excluded values are going to come from the denominators, right? So it's going to come from here and from here. This is a multiplication problem. And so the excluded value for this one for b squared plus 5b plus 4, we have to set it equal to 0. And we have to factor this. So we need two numbers that multiply to 4, but add up to the middle term, which is 5. And that's easy. That's 4 times 1. Right? Because 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. And this is a case 1 because the leading coefficients are 1. So it's going to be b plus 4. So b plus 1 equals 0. And we set each of these equal to 0. So when b plus 4 equals 0, b is a negative 4. And when b plus 1 is equal to 0, b equals a negative 1. So we get two values from this first denominator. Now from the second denominator, the b plus 7, we're going to set that equal to 0, and we get that b equals negative 7. So the excluded values, if we're going to collect them, is negative 4, negative 1, negative 7. Now, to simplify this, because it's multiplication, we just need to multiply across. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in the factoring for this one and this one in just a bit. B squared plus 8b plus 7, right? I'm multiplying across, so the 7 times this over this one times this. Now, remember that this one is actually these two factors. B plus 4 times b plus 1 times this one, b plus 7. And what needs to happen is we need to factor this top one, the top quadratic. And we need two numbers that multiply to 7 and add up to 8. And that's a 7 times a 1. So this is b plus 7 times b plus 1. So in rewriting this, we have the 7, because we can't forget about that 7. B plus 7 times b plus 1 over b plus 4, b plus 1, b plus 7. And when you look at it like this, you realize that the b plus 7's cancel and the b plus 1's cancel. And the final answer will be 7 over b plus 4. So this is this multiplication problem simplified, and these are the excluded values. All right, this is problem number 4. And as we can see here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our excluded values. And the excluded values come from the denominators, and the denominator is 4n plus 4. We're going to set it equal to 0. That's this 4n plus 4 and this denominator, this 10. And we're going to subtract 4. We have 4n equals 4, and we're going to divide out that 4, and we get n equals 1. And then over here, you see how this is just a 10? Can a 10 ever be equal to 0? No. So basically, when you just have a constant in the denominator, you don't get an excluded value from that constant. So the only excluded value that we have is a 1. Now, this is a multiplication problem, so all we need to do is multiply across. So we have 8n times, right? So we have this one times that one over this one times this one. 10 times 4n plus 4. And the first thing you should notice before you even try to distribute is that this is the same thing as this. Thus, we can cancel them. And we really have 8n over 10. but the 8 over 10 are, they have common factors. I believe 2 is the common factor. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So the answer is 4n over 5. Another way of writing this is 4/5 n. Both of them are correct answers. Now this one is a division problem, and the excluded values are actually going to come from the denominators and also from the numerator of the divisor. So each of these terms have to be set equal to 0. Right? So n plus 3 has to be set equal to 0, and the n plus 10 has to be set equal to 0. And you have to solve them individually. So from here you get that n equals -1, n equals -3, and n equals -10. So the excluded values are -1, -3, -10. Right? Now, what's the trick in solving these problems? It's keep, change, flip. And we need to factor the numerator. So we need two numbers, right? We need two numbers that multiply to -10, but add up to the middle term, which is a -9. So that's going to be -10 times 1 and -10 plus 1. And since it's a case 1, because the leading coefficient is a 1, this is n minus 10, n plus 1. All right, so this is what the numerator factors out into. So we have n minus 10, n plus 1 over n plus 1. We're going to change to multiplication, and we're going to flip. So the n plus 10 is on top, and the n plus 3 is on the bottom. And now we have a multiplication problem, and before we go any further, you might notice that these cancel here. So now it's multiplication, so we're going to multiply across. Right, so it's going to be this, the n plus 1 is gone. So it's going to be the n minus 10 times the n plus 10. Over n plus 3. Now this is acceptable. I mean, you can distribute if you want to. You'll get n squared minus 100 over n plus 3. It's the same thing. Both of them are acceptable answers. Alright, this is another division problem, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the excluded values. They come from the denominator and also from the numerator of the divisor. So from the 20x minus 12, we're going to set that equal to 0. We're going to add 12 to both sides. And we're going to get 20x equals 12. Dividing both sides by 20, we get that x is equal to, let's see, 6 over 10, 3 over 5, 3/5. The next denominator is, alright, so this is 1. It's 20x squared minus 12x equals 0. And we're going to factor out a 6, a 2. We're going to factor out a 2, x, and we're going to get 10x minus 6 equals 0. And so we have to set each of these equal to 0. So we have to say 2x equals 0, x equals 0. And 10x minus 6 equals 0. So adding 6, 10x equals 6, x equals, oh, sorry, we got to divide both sides by 10. Divide by 2, 3/5. X equals 3/5. I think we had that one already. Okay. And what do we get from the 1? We don't get anything from the 1. So what are the excluded values? They are 3/5 and 0. Okay. Now, for this problem, remember, for division, you have to keep, you have to change, and you have to flip. So keeping the first fraction, 4 over 20x minus 12 times, flipping the numerator, notice that I'm going to write this as the factored form. Now we're going to multiply across. And remember, when you multiply across, it's this one times this one. We're not cross multiplying, we're multiplying across, numerator times numerator. So, well, 4 times 2 is 8. Over 20x minus 12. I forgot I can factor out a 2 from the denominator. I'm going to have a 10x minus 6. And you'll notice that these cancel. What did I do to my colors? Here we go. So we have 8x over 2, and the 8 divided by the 2 is 4. Whew. This is the answer. So these are the excluded values, and this is the simplified form of the answer.